everybody, Bennett for the Better Podcast, and welcome to Top 5 Friday. On a Friday, we get together and we have a look at the top 5, something normally to do with Blood Bowl, but this week we're going to do something a little bit different because nostalgia wave is strong in the gaming world at the moment. Last week, we saw a sneaky peek that maybe, just maybe, Games Workshop will be bringing back Warhammer Quest. At the very least, they were going to show a video of them playing Warhammer Quest, and boy howdy, did it hit the sweet chart of the 90s, technically 80s, that I am. And it got me thinking, what other games should what boxed games should Games Workshop bring back? So buckle up and welcome to the red era with Games Workshop, because I'm going to do my top 5 Games Workshop games they need to reprint. Coming in at number 5, we've got Man O' War. Oh, Man O' War. Now, this game is from 1993. I was a very young man when this game came out. Some people, Brushtythe, wasn't even like, you know, years, decades before he was around. But there is something absolutely sparkly about this game. And it's a really interesting one because it brings back all the beauty that the Games Workshop games of this era had. You had this kind of flat artwork, the bad model design, it was bits of plastic mixed in with bits of metal, and it was just a little ugly. But man, what a unique setting. And this spawned a video game as well. So Man O' War is the Games Workshop naval game. If you're not familiar with it, then I apologise, that's my fault. Basically, Warhammer Fantasy battles on the high seas. So you had dwarf steamships shooting against high elf, like sleek elf boats, and you had some, it's just wicked, absolutely wicked. Now the game itself got a little bit crunchy and a little bit clunky and a little bit ugly as they brought in more and more. I think this might have been the first example of Games Workshop power creep, where they were like, and here's Nurgle, and Nurgle win everything, and here's Dark Elves, and Dark Elves have castles on the back of sea dragons, so they don't actually have to sail the seas, they just go over here and eat stuff. Yeah, not the best game design, and this is for me why it's number 5 on the list, because not only do I think Games Workshop will never bring this back, they've tried before. And they did Dreadfleet, which was a one-time Games Workshop box that was fantasy naval stuff, and it was set in the old world, and it was just like one boat for each race, and it was this weird little treasure race thing. I don't know, it was, the models were gorgeous. There was a mechanical octopus. It was a gorgeous little box. The gameplay was a little bit lackluster, and the fact that there was no factions meant that there was really no ownership for the game was remarkable. Me, Craig, Ian, I think we all went in, we were like, oh, I'll paint these 3 ships, I'll paint these 3 ships, and then no one painted any 3 ships, and I don't know where any of the rest of it is. It was a cool idea, it's a cool theme, but again, I don't think Games Workshop will ever bring it back, because I think they tried it with Dreadfleet and they did a bad job of it with Dreadfleet, and then it kind of died. But Mantic brought back with their Armada game, and it was beautifully done. It's a really good rule set, the models are gorgeous, and I mean, it landed pretty well, I thought, but something about it meant that it's kind of been quieted away in the way of Mantic. They've stopped producing new stuff for it. It went the way of STLs, and I think it's basically died. So this makes me think the Games Workshop won't ever bring it back, because they tried a little bit with Dreadfleet. I imagine they sold out, and they've seen that Mantic also tried it, and it's kind of gone away. So it might just be that fantasy naval games are a bit of a dream, but man, what a dream to have. Number 4, I can't believe this is number 4 on the list, Battlefleet Gothic. Talking about dreams, oh wow, Battlefleet Gothic, still in the 90s, 1999 this game came out, and not only did it come out in a box set form that was wonderful, it was dropped in a White Dwarf maybe like a year before with some cardboard cutouts to request feedback from people. Can you imagine? Games Workshop were like, here, people who read White Dwarf, here's this game idea. They did this with several of their games during the 90s period, during that specialist games peak period. And people were like, this is cool, this is not cool, go do this. And then they turned that into a book and they produced some of their nicest plastic models ever. I think this was the nicest, earliest plastic stuff they had. The detail was quality, and to this day, they could just reprint that stuff, reproduce the plastic kits in particular, and no one would have any complaints. The metal stuff was a little bit clunky, a little bit choppy, as kind of like all metal produced stuff can be, like molds slip and metal can be a little bit volatile, and it's not always the best material to, I mean, we used metal models for ages, but I think I've now come to terms with the fact that plastic is probably a better material. But BFG landed, and to this day I would say it is probably one of the most emotive specialist games. Spaceships from 40k creeping across the table, just nuking each other about. It was absolutely wicked. Again, they made a video game of this, so if you want to experience what marine spaceships can be, it can be very special, very cinematic. But this box was wicked. You had like 4 Imperial ships, 4 Chaos ships, you got the box, you got whippy sticks, extra points for that, and the gameplay was that was amazing. You could open the box, build the ships, then go and add more ships to get your fleet. And this is something that Kaijin Chicken keeps pestering me about. It's like, hey Ben, print some ships, we'll play a game. Do you know what? It's probably going to happen, Dick, because this game is just, it has such a look and such a vibe, and I'm a big spaceship fan. So for me, number 4, come on, Battlefleet Gothic. Number 3, it is the game that inspired this list in the first place, and that is Warhammer Quest. So Warhammer Quest is a dungeon crawler set in the world of Warhammer from the long time ago of 1995. And this was basically a build on Hero Quest. So the way this worked is that Hero Quest was produced, and I think Hero Quest was produced with the support of Games Workshop, and then they did Advanced Hero Quest, which was, I think, primarily Games Workshop, and then some stuff happened, and then Games Workshop brought out Warhammer Quest. And there's a couple of really important things about Warhammer Quest, and for us Blood Bowl fans, the first one are the tiles. The tiles are what spawned the second version of Dungeon Bowl. The first version of Dungeon Bowl was Elves, Dwarves, Dungeon Bowl was the orange box and had basically the A4 dungeon sheets. Third edition, Blood Bowl came out. Jervis Johnson? Yeah, produced an article about Blood Bowl using these tiles, where you could do Dungeon Bowl using these tiles, produce the extra end zone tiles that fit in with it, and just it set the look of Dungeon Bowl that never went away. And when Games Workshop redid Dungeon Bowl, they produced tiles, and the tiles could be used for Warhammer Quest. Well, shiver my timbers, that's going to have to be something I'm going to go after looking. The tiles were such an important thing because I don't know about you, but there is something just exciting about a dungeon crawler, and I don't know if it is the implied nature of it being a co-op, and I don't know if it's that implied nature that we are going to be exploring these dungeons. There's a puzzle to solve, there is a story to unravel, and it is almost non-competitive. Now, the way most dungeon crawlers work, especially Warhammer Quest, is that one person will play a villain, and the villain will control all the monsters, and he will normally be some kind of evil wizard with a name like Zargalar. I can't remember what the wizard's called in Warhammer Quest, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't something very similar to that. Now, the first thing this game is all about is the tiles. The second thing is just about the classic models that were in there, and I think the orcs were available to also buy as a full-on unit, but the hero models in there, and in particular the monster models like that, they were also produced for Warhammer, and the monsters were a swarm in Warhammer. So you had like a box and you'd buy it, and it would have like 4 bats, 4 rats, 4 spiders, 4 snotlings, and you'd like basically get a bunch of swarms for fantasy battles. It was absolutely wicked. So yes, Warhammer Quest, it looks so retro, and I think it is probably just the peak of 4th edition Warhammer. It just takes that red box, green based era, and it chucks it into a game that you could play if you were 7 or 17 or 27, because it was just a fantastic bring together of the high fantasy version of the high fantasy world of Warhammer, right? It peaked at 4th, got a little bit gribbly at 5th, and then 6th it started to get a little bit grimdarky. And boy howdy, it was great. Now, the rules itself were not groundbreaking by a long shot. In fact, it is probably arguably the worst game on this list. But very much like movies, right? You don't need a movie to be good for it to be fun. You don't need a game to be great for it to be great. Number 2, it is the twin-tailed comet of Sigmar coming around and slamming into the world. It is 1999. The world is looking forward to the Millennium Apocalypse. And in Warhammer, it almost happens. So Mheim is the game that is number 2 on this list. And it's not quite number 1 on this list, but I tell you what, this game would sell in the millions. That might be an example. That might be a bit stretch. I don't know. It might do. Probably wouldn't. But it might do. Mheim. Skirmish warfare in a destroyed city in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Now, the original Mheim game was set 500 years before the current timeline. But there's a thing going on in Games Workshop. This game is perfect. This is the moment in time for it to return. The old world is having a renaissance. It is back. Everybody's jazzed up for the nostalgia of 6th edition Warhammer, of all that kind of vibe, the rank, the flank, the Warhammer world. But also, Trench Crusade has cropped up and gone, hey, remember that time where everything was kind of orange and sepia? Yeah, we're all about that. It's all about the grimdark. And Mheim took the world of Warhammer, the races, the elements of it, the models of it, and just doused it in a grimdark world. It was basically the best of Warhammer Fantasy Battle and the best of Necromunda and the best of John Blanche. And the best of Thomas Pyronin. This game was an absolute corker, and that's why I've been painting some buildings in the background. You can see there, because Ian Warhammer was like, hey, Mheim. And then all of a sudden, I've got myself a ruined village. Because Mheim is a special game. It's the vibe, the look of it, the feel of it, fantastic. If they brought this back now and capitalized on the nostalgia wave that is Warhammer the Old World and the Trench Crusade Grimdark, because Mheim was the OG Grimdark skirmish game. Necromunda was a green-based game. Everyone was kind of a little bit happy. It was a little bit dark, but it was also a little bit happy. But Mheim really was just like, hey, here's your models, paint them brown. And I'm a big fan of that. So Mheim, Games Workshop, bringing Mheim back, or, hear me out, bringing back a game similar to Mheim, even set in the world of Age of Sigmar, would still super work. Now, they've tried it in Age of Sigmar. They've tried to make a skirmish game. They brought Warcry in. The rule set was pretty good, but the fact that the teams were kind of just really too unique, to the point where they couldn't really be grounded in the unique. They were either too unique or too bland, and the game was just not tie-inable to their core thing. But if they took the cities of Sigmar, which is basically what Empire rebirthed into the world of Age of Sigmar, and did picked a realm and were like, this has happened and there's a destruction here, and now everyone's sending little warbands into the ruins of this town in this realm, and everyone's collecting stuff, and it's all about like having little warbands doing the same thing in ruined cities. They could key into that. So whether it's Sigmar or not, I think they've got an opportunity here with the rise of all the nostalgia and the grimdark, and people want skirmish games. So Mheim, superb. But number 1 on this list is inarguably the most iconic game I think Games Workshop have ever produced. Yes, sure, Warhammer Fantasy Battles is big and 40k is like, yeah. Space Hulk. If you say the words Space Hulk to anybody kind of like who's been tangentially linked to Games Workshop, they're going to go, oh, Space Hulk. Because either they would have got the 1989 edition. Yeah, or like the 2005 edition, or the 1995 edition, or the 2017 edition, or something like that. I don't know. They've done 4 different versions of Space Hulk, and they've sold out every single time. This game is just insanely popular. They've done it with each version of some beautiful models, and the fact that you are just playing in a space dungeon with aliens, not from aliens, but basically from aliens, but they're also Tyranids, and you are taken on with human tanks in the form of Space Marine Terminators. This is just, it just has a look, a modelling opportunity, but a beautiful simplicity to it. And this is why Space Hulk has been so good for so long. It doesn't have bloat, it doesn't have growth, it doesn't have like this team. There are fan-made rules. They were extra rules in this first edition you could do stuff with, but Space Hulk has always been aliens versus Space Marines. It's always been Tyranids, it's always been Gene Stealers versus Space Marine Terminators. And that is just all it would need to be. Now, don't get me wrong, everyone loves expansions, and Games Workshop like making Space Marines. But they've recently just redone the Tyranid range. They've just redone Space Marine Terminators. This would be, I think, the perfect time for them to drop another edition of Space Hulk, because it is just a fantastic board game experience. It's a good rule set. It's not a fantastic rule set, but it is a good rule set. But it has an element of challenge and containment to itself that just hits a sweet spot that I think would land perfectly with new customers, with new Games Workshop customers, or with old Games Workshop customers, because it's either, oh cool, some Space Marines and some aliens in a little game, all right, let's buy this, 2 of us, let's go 50-50 on a box, let's get it together, let's paint it up, this would be really great. Or, oh my god, Space Hulk, I bought that at a car boot when I was 7 and I played the heck out of it. I think that is the perfect crossroads. So Space Hulk, as much as I love the other games, it just is #1 on this list. Now, before I wrap up, there are some honourable mentions that I do want to talk through. So, Space Hulk, Mheim, Warhammer Quest, Battlefleet Gothic, and Man of War, everything I've mentioned on this list all ended up with an app or a video game for it, which is phenomenal, and I think just goes to show how good each of those games' individual IPs really is. That really solidifies it. But there's a few games that didn't make the list, and it kind of goes to show, because Games Workshop have brought some games back in the past. Necromunda they brought back, it did great. Blood Bowl, game you may have heard of, brilliant. And they also brought back Adeptus Titanicus, and did that in the, I think, the most successful from a game development point of view, from a model point of view. Oh, chef's kiss. They then went and screwed that up a little bit with Legions Imperialis by bringing back the best models with the worst rule set they could have put together for it. Absolutely gutted, because I was like, oh my god, Epic is back. And they're like, yeah, well, how about every model you roll off against your opponent against their other model? It's like, that is the worst. Like, I'd really rather play Slapsies, because that is a poor mechanic, absolute trash, and therefore the game has landed, and it kind of not very well. But there's a couple of games that I haven't mentioned, and one of them is Blackstone Fortress. So this one is not from the 90s, but I think needs a jolly good reprint. This is from a 2018 game. So this was a hex-based 40k Warhammer Quest. Okay, it was called Warhammer Quest, but it is a dungeon crawler set in 40k, and it was just a fantastic way to bring in some models, some interesting individual models from the Warhammer 40k world, and put it together with a game that, by all accounts, the rules were great, the AI was pretty good, and it gave a really good gaming experience. So I think Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress is a game they really need to bring back. Personally, if they could take some of the design elements and the way they applied the models for Blackstone Fortress and did that in the old world, then they would make all the money, and they would also make all the Ben happy, which would be pretty cool. And the other 2 mentions would be Gorkamorka and Warmaster. Now, I love Warmaster, but I think I love the idea of Warmaster more than I love the idea of Games Workshop making Warmaster. They brought it back with the old world. You know, you can play your Warhammer stuff, and I think that's really good. I like the idea of them making Warmaster again, but I think maybe they try it out in the Age of Sigmar world. Small scale Warhammer, always been popular, but probably not popular enough to establish a whole game. So maybe War Master doesn't come back. It's a fantastic rule set and it looks brilliant and it looks super classic. But not only is it not from the 90s, I don't think it would stand up that well. I don't think the Games Workshop model would be able to support it. And last but not least, Gorka Morka. Now, they kind of had a go at bringing this back when they did Speed Freaks in 2018, I think, maybe a little bit after that, which was a box of orc vehicles that had a sub game with. I think that worked great. But the reason Gorka Morka didn't make the list is, yes, orcs, great fun. But I think they've kind of done it with the way they've done the Ash Wastes in Necromunda. If they brought Gorka Morka back, they've already kind of done it. I think you could probably do Gorka Morka just by using the Ash Waste rules. Although it would be really fun for them to do an orc warband for Necromunda. That would be super interesting. But I don't think it's enough there to support an entire game. It's a very iconic game, but probably not enough to support a whole game. Anyway, that's going to wrap up my top 5. This was a bit of a nostalgia hit and really just me getting a chance to gush over some great Games Workshop games that I would love for them to bring back. So thank you very much for watching. Comment below if you agree, disagree, or if I've missed some games off there. I know that some of you are going to mention Dark Future, but yeah, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Let me know what you think below and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking.